Because I've seen my journey from selling $3,000 a month to over $150,000.
Wow.
You're going to sell sprinkles to the Americans. And I said, yes, I'm going to sell sprinkles to the Americans. Watch me do it.
Yeah. Do you think that sometimes these sharks over-grill you?
ऐसा तो नहीं है आप वो इंडियन कंज्यूमर्स को एंड B2B कंज्यूमर्स को हैप्पी नहीं रख पा रही है.
What the hell? School was in modern school, Barakamba. My granddad is from St. Stephen's. My aunts, moms, all Masis are from LSR. So I was the only Indian in my class.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And you were the speaker.
And I was the speaker. And then I used to go to Chandni Chowk. So, you know, so glam. They were like, ये क्या बकवास बनाया है? ये बहुत ही गंदा है. It's horrible. And they all like completely like ripped me apart. And then I started making machines.
You started making machines.
I started engineering my own machines. And we doubled year on year. So I'm the only one from this country to export such huge quantities of sprinkles across the world. And now, God, I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this, but...
Namaste and welcome to another episode of the Witty Podcast. Today we have with us Chef Gauri of Shark Tank fame, जिनको 1 करोड़ की डील मिली है नमिता थापर से. Shark Tank इंडिया में आज सिर्फ एक शो नहीं है, it's actually become a cultural phenomenon जो शेप करता है ना सिर्फ स्टार्टअप की परसेप्शन बट उनके फाउंडर्स की भी परसेप्शन. इफ यूर अ स्टार्टअप फाउंडर और समवन हु इज ऑलवेज वंडर्ड कि शार्क टैंक कैसे जाते हैं, बिहाइंड द सीन्स क्या होता है, देन दिस एपिसोड इज full of insights for you. I genuinely felt like taking notes while recording this with her. So make sure you make notes while watching this episode and subscribe to Witty Podcast for more such valuable insights. So you've had a very interesting story, right? So I would want to understand, how were you as a student growing up? Your extremely interesting pedigree. I want to know more about that. What propelled you to actually aim for a school like LSR?
Yeah.
And then later on, what changed in life that got you into building Confect eventually? So let's completely start from
The
Baby
beginning.
Gauri.
Okay, so Baby Gauri was a true blue tomboy.
Yeah.
All my friends in the colony were guys. I have a brother, we're just about a year apart. So all our friends happened to be guys at that point. So I was always one of the boys. I've grown up like that. I was never a girly girl. So I can't talk about shoes, clothing, hair. I don't do it even today.
Yeah.
So I think that started my journey off in a certain way. I think that makes me more fearless. I was never scared. I was always doing what guys did. So I never even felt the difference, in terms of gender. I remember my mom used to be like, she's always in denim. She never wants to wear like dresses and frocks. And that was always me. And I would actually get into more trouble than the boys. And I was the one who used to egg the boys on to get into like even do crazier things.
Yeah.
And that was me always growing up. And I think that shaped me as a person where I am today, where I just take a leap of faith and I'm like, dekhi jayegi, what's the worst that can happen? School was in modern school, Barakamba. I'm a third generation modernite. And my family is interesting in the sense that both sides of my family are extremely well educated. And education is a very big part of our world. I know most families do give it a certain weightage, but mine is on another level. So my granddad is from St. Stephen's. My aunts, moms, all Masis are from LSR.
Wow.
My great-grandfather was a freedom fighter. So it's just been amazing. And the kind of heritage and the legacy that my family brings in.
What do your parents do right now?
So my dad is a businessman. He's been running multiple businesses as an entrepreneur as well, plus his family business for over his lifetime. My great-grandfather was grandfather into real estate. So there's a cinema hall in Delhi called Sheila. That's my dadi.
Okay.
And I think they were very innovative, where they were the first to bring in Dolby digital technology to India.
Wow.
I remember watching English movies there for the first time in my life. Like Jurassic Park was one of the first ones I watched. So it was a larger-than-life experience. My grandfather was a politician, so I've also gone with them for political rallies, very young. So I had exposure to both sides. School, I used to usually sit in the press box in the Parliament House and finish my lunch because mom used to pick me up from school and take me straight to Parliament. So, grown up again in Parliament around ministers and people in power. So exceptionally different lifestyle and upbringing from both sides. And I could see that every person in my family excelled. They earned a lot of respect and they were very well known and liked for what they did. So, that benchmark is really hard because you look at it and you wonder how they got there.
I think we got a glimpse of that in your pitch also, right? Any other person would get intimidated by the kind of grilling the sharks were doing, right?
Yeah.
But you stood firm, man. You were giving answers. You were not taking any BS. Like, it was very clear that you know
Yeah.
your shit.
Yeah.
And you were calling them out that, bro, this is befaltu, quote
Yeah.
unquote.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So,
मतलब ऐसे थोड़ी पहुंच गए हैं. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I just didn't drop from the sky and suddenly I was this
Yeah.
entrepreneur running
Yeah.
a 50 crore company.
Yeah.
No, it was a lot of hard work. It started ground up. इसके बीच also the story is very interesting. So, I was telling you earlier that I'm a hard worker, but I'm not great at mugging. So if there is a system that is rigged or doesn't make sense, I never got it. So in India, typically when you work, study NCRT and you're sitting for CBSE boards, you're basically ratta maroing.
Yeah.
And you're just vomiting that out on this answer sheet, right? And I remember my brother would spend half the time studying than I would, and he would do so much better. And there was me sitting and waking up 5 in the morning with a proper schedule, with registers, books, cramming, and then really trying to remember all of it like on repeat mode, and still not excelling when it came to answering the right questions at class. And I always struggled at it. So I said, okay, you know what? I realized early on that I can't break the system. So how do I get around the system? So I was like, okay, if I can get about a 75%, I was a distinction student. So I wasn't a bad student, but I was above average, but not excelling to get into the top colleges. And that time I was told, BCom honors and all of that. So you need like a 95% plus. I was like, sensible enough to know that 75 to 95 to nahi hone wala hai. So we have to find a way to do it. Chalo 75 ka main 80 tak le aun, 81 tak le aun. Legit, I can do it. But how do I get around the other one? And this is me at 15, like to have that understanding of who I am. Yeah, 10th grade, like to understand what my shortcomings were and what is possible, what is not possible. And all these incidents now, when I think about it, it shaped so much of my personality. So I decided to become a swimmer. I was already, so basketball in our school was like already set, the teams were set, the girls play a lot. And they came from a certain, there was the coolest team in school and very hard to get through. And the basketball team, in most schools, it's like the coolest one. And I was like, yahan to nahi hone wala. And again, school, I was typical tomboy. And a little overweight. So I got into the pool and I said, this kind of makes sense. It's at the back of the school. It's pretty secluded and I can do my thing. And figure out whether I can do it or not. So I got into the pool at summer after the results came, first month of being in the 11th grade. And by November, I made it to the national levels. From a straight beginner to nationals.
Wow. And this just started with you deciding, I'll do swimming. That I decided I'll do this and you did it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's that easy.
Like it was not easy. I've always been a water baby.
Yeah.
And also being on the bigger side didn't help. But my coach was fantastic. He said, "Aap kar loge." And it was a lot of sacrifice. So, 11th grade is the party grade in school. Everyone is chilling. There's no boards. And, you have some freedoms that come after 10th. You've chosen your subjects. All of that has happened. And I remember in school also, when it came to choosing subjects, they said, aapka aptitude is for humanities. And I was like, nahi, mere ko humanity nahi padhna hai. Like, I'm not interested in arts and history and things. And it's not me. And then I remember that was a fight as well. That I will do commerce with maths. And you will give me commerce with maths. And I will make it happen.
Yeah.
And they took a chance on me. That's what I love about my school. They were like, okay. And even as a swimmer, like just a basic swimmer going up to nationals, I used to wake up at 5 in the morning, go to Talkatora Stadium, train there. Actually, I'd wake up at 4:30, and then train there, come to school by about 8:30. I used to get exemption for my first period. And that's, again, very something cool about the school. And then finish school, 3 o'clock back at Talkatora. School used to finish at 1:45. Lunch on the way. And then train there at about 5:36, come back home, dinner, tuitions, homework, whatever, sleep. This was my life for 2 years. There was no, bolte na, ghoda like this. There was no second thing that I was just not doing anything else. I was like, these are the 2 years that can define the rest of my life and the rest of my future. So to hell with the night outs and the movie outs and, prom and this and that. I just didn't bother. Like Conti parties, graduation. I did not care. I was really focused on what I had to do. And you have to maintain the momentum because when you give your board in the 12th, you also have to continue to train after your board exams because when you go in for sports quota, which gives you about 10 to 15%, you have to do trials. And those sports trials are everything. You can have all the certificates you want for school, but if you do not perform in the trials, buddy, you're not getting through. So while everybody was again chilling and partying, they were totally free, tab tak college application nahi aayenge, hum karenge. I was training every day at National Stadium. So it wasn't easy on any regard, whether it was summer or it was winters, we were training. And the crazy thing is, nationals in this country happen largely in November. So I remember going to Guwahati for nationals and swimming in an outdoor pool. So none of it was in the cold, and none of it was glamorous.
Yeah.
But it really shaped me to be the person I was. Like, I was already faced with adversity then. And I remember at that point, this pool was like green water. It had tadpoles in it, and we were still swimming in it, and we just had to. And there was, I remember we were in the pool, and I was like, "Don't swallow any water. Just don't swallow any water," because it was the facility that time. It was what it was, and we made do with what was available because we had the rest of our future riding on us. So I was not like, "You, this is too dirty. I can't do this. Germs."
Yeah.
No, it was what it was.
Yeah.
So either make it happen or don't. And I think again that shaped my personality, because no matter what the adversity was, and you were freezing, we had to show up and perform and do the numbers and get the medals. So
And then you finally got into LSR.
I got into LSR.
How was that like?
Oh my God. Okay, truth be told, it was a very different experience. Like, in my head, I was told LSR is, it's one of the best schools. But oh my God, it's really tough being in that environment because it's so academically oriented. Here's a tomboy in an all-girls school. It was really hard.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, My class was about 56 girls. So BCom is the only one section, and there are about 50 to 55 girls in it. Most of them out of the country, out of the city.
Yeah.
And again, so that cultural gap is there because we are the Delhi girls. And then I realized what a Delhi girl meant, to these guys, because there was such a difference.
Yeah.
But academically, I spent more time in classes. College was harder because of the load. Like, your attendance is a big thing at LSR, and performance as well. And I was swimming. So every morning I would still go to National Stadium.
Wow.
And then, which was CP, and then from there go to Lady Shri Ram with dripping wet hair. And I think my teachers have this memory of me with a backpack, trainers hanging on it, and soaking wet hair like every single day. And then you had all these girls who were like fully prepped up and primed. And then there was me, and my attitude was, it's all girls, why don't you need to dress up? I'm just going to go in my night suit, it doesn't matter, or in my tracks. And that was me. However, during that orientation, I found, all the societies in college, they kind of do a showcase for the new students. And the Western Dance Society came on, and I thought they were the coolest thing I've ever seen. Because, other than anything cultural, they were like, there was modern music, and they were doing these acrobatic steps and jazz, and it looked so out of whack. I was like, yay karna hai. So at the end of 3 years, I was sitting next to somebody that time, and I said, I'm going to leave this college as the president of this society. And 3 years later, I left as the president of this society.
So you again decided something.
Yeah, I have a very set goal, and then I just work towards it. And it could sound crazy at that time. I mean, that girl looked at me, she's like, kuch bhi. But again, these instances, I didn't realize at that time that was my nature, my personality. I am a horse with blinders. I'm very clear about what I want. I need a roadmap. I can't be aimlessly floating around.
But I see so many interesting, themes so far in your story, which actually were hinting towards you eventually becoming an entrepreneur, right? You had a solid proof of concept in your ability to do whatever you decide to do, be it becoming the president of a society or getting into LSR. Like, a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Usually people are like, oh, I'm at 75, but I want a certain percentage, so let me just, keep toiling hard and figure out. You were very smart about it. Listen, these are my limitations. This is the best I can do.
Yeah.
But I still want that thing.
Yeah.
So how do I optimize?
How do I navigate myself to get there?
Exactly.
And
it's a very jugadu, I would say.
Yeah, very. So, I find the loopholes.
Yeah. And then another thing is, because you had such a strong family influence, it became a huge driving force that this is a bare minimum that you have to reach. It's not a big deal to crack LSR. It's like sort of a rite of passage for the
it has to be done. It's not like, wow, it's like, okay.
Karna hai.
Yeah, part of the family,
So
beta.
I think all of that has been shaping you to become the woman you are today.
Yeah, so extremely competitive, result-driven, result-oriented. And the same thing with when I was learning how to swim, I lost my sense of smell. And that was during a sports injury, when you learn to train on the block. And I don't have one even today. But that adversity didn't stop me from becoming a chef.
Yeah.
People are like, this is your bottom line basic requirements. So I'm the one who's always broken barriers, always. So that was the first one. Again, the second one, once I finished, I wanted to go study abroad, and my dad said, I would prefer if you do direct flights. So please don't go to the US.
Yeah.
You know, unlike what Anupam said, ki, oh, London, South Delhi ke paas hai. That's not what I meant.
Yeah.
I told him I was 21, and at that point, I just really wanted to get out of the country. And again, in our family, everybody, all my cousins, everyone I've known has always gone out for postgrad abroad. And that's one of the things that are again done in our family. But you have to go to an A-list school.
Yeah.
So A-list school, if you take out US from the equation, UK, there's hardly like very few.
Yeah.
So your chances are like cut down drastically.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, Oxford sounds really nice. And when I said sounds really nice, I looked at the campuses, typically what you would do. And I was like, I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to a university, not like a city college. So I applied there. And I remember I had a round of interview, and he said, if you come next year, we'll give you a scholarship. And I was like, no, I'm not going to wait 1 year. I want to come this year. So he offered about a part scholarship for the course. And for me, my time was more important. And this is a 21-year-old, you know, saying my time is more important. So I said, I'll come this year. And within 2 months, I packed my bags and I was at Oxford, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, as any parent, they would have liked me to settle down at some point in life, you know. That's kind of, you get groomed in a certain
21
way.
is too soon.
21 is too soon, but eventually it's like you will do this, then we'll want you back, and maybe 24, 25, it's a good age. I don't think I was ever with that plan, but I went along with it till it worked for me. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Finished Oxford. Oxford was tough. So you asked me about LSR, I'll tell you about Oxford.
Yeah.
The first 3 months, I almost flunked everything. Yeah,
What?
it was so hard. I used to cry almost every other night because I couldn't cope. I couldn't understand how to crack the system. If you've been educated till 2021 in a certain way, you're not allowed. Indian education system, and now, God, I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this, but it doesn't allow you to think.
Yeah.
It tells you this is the right answer and this is the wrong answer. So अगर तुम्हें right याद है और तुमने लिख दिया तो 100 on 100, you know? And you can score even 100 or 90 plus or 95 plus in a literature sort of course, which I find very strange. I understand math, but I don't understand
It's
this.
so subjective.
It's so subjective, right? And we did commerce, and commerce business studies doesn't have 100 on 100. Like, there's no right answer to everything. But that's how we were conditioned this whole time, you know. And here I came to Oxford, and they said, this is a reading list, and this is the question. That's the assignment. That's it. Now you read all this, and you figure out how you want to answer this question. Whatever your argument is, you have to back your argument. And there's no right or wrong answer. Bhai, that's a toss. What do you mean there's no right or wrong answer? My entire life, someone's telling me there's a right and wrong answer, and suddenly it's like you have to learn to think for yourself, and you have to learn to argue and put your point forth. And I remember I used to call my dad and say, I don't think I can do this, man. Like, we haven't been grown up and brought up in this way. We don't even think like that.
Yeah.
But oh boy, when I figured out how to do this, I, of course, attempted. But again, you know, the feedback used to come back on my assignment that this is too, again, you've done copy-paste. Like, we want to hear what you're saying. We want to hear what you're saying. So it was not like, Acha, we know you've done the reading, but where's your voice?
Your opinion.
Where's your opinion? Like, you're telling me, so let's say you've read 10 readings, and out of those 5 you agree with. So you've quoted and basically rephrased those 5 and put it there. That's not what I want. What did you pick up from those 5 in your words? You know, why do you want to do this? And that was even another level, because it was not like, Acha, I figured out what I stand for, this is what it is, so I'll just write that. No, that's also not acceptable.
Everything.
Yeah. And there has to be a structure and all of that. And I think my professors were great because they just pushed. So when we had lectures, there weren't textbooks. It was just like a conversation for 1 hour. And I used to go to class finish class very confused. Ki, what? Like, what was the class? You know, because there's not like point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, nothing like that. It was just like, okay, today we're going to talk about this section of the economy, and that was it. We're just talking. Everybody's giving their points of view. And we had about 33 countries in that class. So we would argue amongst each other, but again, I never knew how to think. And when I cracked it, and I did, that's when life changed. So I learned how to think for myself. I started doing really, really well at my subjects. I actually graduated as my class speaker for my batch. So by the end of it, I did. I used to row.
You're having like those zero to hero arcs every year.
I think I'm like that, and this is what I was telling Anupam, get a little restless. You have to keep doing something to grow. If I said, I'm not going to grow, then I would have not learned how to think. how to
Exactly.
apply fundamentals to application in a different way. Uh, there was no swimming there, so I used to row. I learned how to row because that was a thing to do. There was an Indian society, so I did a lot of Bollywood dances.
Yeah.
And then I figured, okay, I would love to graduate as a class speaker, and that's what I did. So for me, the biggest honor was standing at Sheldonian giving the class
Wow.
graduation speech,
Wow.
and that was cool. So
Did you feel any sort of biases towards Indian students there?
no, in
Or
fact,
like,
so many of us were there who were Indian.
yeah.
Except for my class, I was the
Yeah.
only Indian in my class.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And you were the speaker.
And I was the speaker. So it was a huge moment of pride. But I think for me, Oxford changed my life in the best way possible, because I realized that the the um, the power of your mind is incredible. I don't think I would have become a food technologist, a scientist, or innovator in any way had I not gone to this school, because I learned to think for myself. And then post that, I worked with Deloitte, and again, it was very similar. You meet clients, and my first project I was thrown into was Johnson and Johnson, and it was across EMEA, so there was 33 countries, and we were operating across all offices in that. And I was just straight out of college, and the kind of responsibility that you're put through at that point to deliver, and the consequences of your actions, they're huge, and you suddenly grow up. And I just can't explain this to you better. So, and I decided to do consulting because I was like, अभी मुझे पता नहीं मेरे को क्या करना है, but मेरे को सब चीज़ का थोड़ा सा, I want a tip in every industry to understand how it works. So I worked in oil and gas, I worked in human resources, I worked in government, I worked at the
Consumer
Olympic
product.
Games.
Yeah.
I worked across the board, every industry, and I realized I loved retail. Like, I just enjoyed retail, human interaction. We did a project for Absolute 100, I think, at that point, and we were launching it at supermarket shelves. And I enjoyed it so much because the excitement was so much. And then Lehman Brothers crashed.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to come back.
Yeah.
Now, again, this talks about my nature, because I could have sat in London earning free money because you were on the bench, you're anyway getting a salary.
Yeah.
And I would have just chilled and cruised along. But I was like, no, nothing is going to happen in this economy for a couple of years. It's going to take a long time for it to recover. So why not come back to India? FDI had opened up. I said, India is going to skyrocket. There's a huge opportunity in this country. So I came back. And then from Delhi, I moved to Bombay, because that's where everything was happening, in terms of all the brands coming in and all. And then I worked with the brands there. And I opened over 100 stores for multiple premium brands across India, all malls. I understood how it navigates. And then did it for a good 3-4 years. And then I was like, okay, it's the same thing. I've reached the top of the food chain. Now what do I do? Even started buying. So started as someone who did business development and then got into buying and marketing and all of that. And then I got my 360. So I said, now what next? I wanted to get married. So I came back to Delhi, and because my husband is from Delhi.
Yeah. How did you
And,
find him?
I met him at a bar.
Really?
Yeah.
During that time also? Us
During that
zamane
time,
mein
yeah.
bhi?
I think I met him within the first week I came back from the UK, and he came with my best friend.
Yeah.
And that's how we met, through
Yeah.
common friends. And for him, he says rest is history.
Yeah.
For me, it took a long time to get there and understand.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. Anyway, so came back here and got a job in e-commerce, because Gurgaon was rocking e-commerce that point in time. Worked with the brand for a bit, but I didn't like the Delhi work culture. It was very yes sir, hanji sir. So I used to be like, why have you hired me if you just want a yes man? I'm not a yes man. I lasted as long as I could, and then I said, okay, maybe this is not ideal. And at that time, we decided to go to Vegas and get married. So we went to Vegas, came back, got married, ordered this reception cake. And honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do, because I just quit my job, and I was in that space where I was going to figure out after I got married what I wanted to do next. And my husband is very like, you need to work. I don't want an idle person sitting at home. Like, he loves being with a partner who's out there in the world as well, and is bringing something to the table from her perspective, And yeah, so
what does he do?
he's a designer and a garment exporter.
So both of you are sort of into creative
Yeah, and both
professions.
of us run our own businesses. So that's the best part, because when I'm going through some motions, he's already probably been through those motions. So he's been working since he was 18 as well. And it's very easy to talk to someone who understands where you're coming from or has been in that situation. So a lot of times, even now when I'm stuck somewhere, I ask him like, how did you navigate this? How did you navigate this? What do I do? And it helps. It helps a lot. Even the long hours, the crazy hours, the manic stress.
There's understanding.
There's a huge understanding. Like when I say shipment has to go, he understands that's it. Like what that means. Like I don't have to explain to him what a shipment means, and this wonderful reception cake entered my life. And the funny thing is that this cake, it's not someone like I just picked up the phone and I called. I remember LBB had printed a list of the top 10 home bakers in Delhi.
That's how you chose.
And that's how I chose. And then I called this baker. I spoke to her at length. I met her at Starbucks. We sat and sketched the design of the cake.
Okay.
I showed her pictures of my trip and my travel. I requested a cake tasting to be happening. All of this happened. Like I had done all the checks ki,
Yeah.
taste kar liya to kharab nahi hoga, design bata diya to wo kharab nahi hoga, and all of that. And she's like, okay, I'll deliver it. But dude, when it came,
It was horrible. We all saw it.
I was shocked when Monita's like, it's not so bad. I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, it was terrible. And that's like, again, a normal person would be like, इससे लड़ाई करो, इसको बोलो पैसे वापस करे. I didn't do any of that. I didn't call her after that. I was like, it's done, it's done. Like, wedding cakes, it was a moment that got ruined. It's always going to be a part of my wedding album. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So what do I do? Getting that money back is not going to do it. I'm going to waste energies, saying कि मैं Facebook पे जाके ये review डालूंगी. I didn't do all of that. It's just, what is it going to achieve, And I said, okay, there's an opportunity here because here there's me, well educated, has the money and the means to pay for something like this. And there's demand, but there's no supply.
Yeah.
So if I'm one of the first, I'm sure there'll be more like me.
Yeah.
It's not possible कि मैं ही हूँ. I was like, okay, let's get into this bottom of this cake. है क्या इस cake? And what is the Indian industry at? And I realized at that point, everything was still black forest and pineapple pastry. There was nothing glamorous happening. So they said, you want to do a course? And I was like, no, I don't understand if there will be a return on investment. So if you do a course at Cordon Bleu or something, it's very expensive. You end up paying like 10 to 20 lakhs. So, typically you will go do another course for it. And I was like, LSR kar liya, Oxford kar liya. Now I'll spend another 10, 15 lakhs, stay, travel, everything, then come back and it'll come up to about 20 lakhs.
Yeah.
Firstly, I don't have that money. I was completely broke after my wedding. And then even if I did, what is the return on investment? How many pineapple pastries am I selling for this? Is it really going to happen? So I was like, okay, let's try it. I am a very proof of concept kind of person. So like, chalo ghar se karte hain. So I started baking cupcakes. That's the only thing I knew how to do because you had to put it in a mold and, get it out. And I had baked enough to know how to do the basics. And again, one of the first few people to do it. So I launched G's Patisserie because everybody calls me G.
Okay.
And that's why, and patisserie is a French name for bakery.
Yeah.
And I started getting orders. I started putting on Facebook. There was no WhatsApp again at that point,
Which year are we talking about?
2014.
Wow, there was no WhatsApp then.
I don't think there was any WhatsApp.
Yeah.
I can't even remember now, honestly.
Yeah.
I think there was MSN and a bunch of weirds.
Even I think I was in 10th grade when WhatsApp came. That was 2016.
Yeah, so it was probably after that.
Yeah.
Because I remember there were no broadcast messages and all. And yeah, so just on Facebook, cold calling, telling word of mouth. Facebook. I advertised a lot on Facebook. And people started ordering. People liked what I was doing. It was very different. It was very unique because I brought in flavors which were internationally done right. So it was not like the flavor didn't exist in India, but not everything was meetha. Like when I said strawberry or lemon, it was strawberry and it was lemon. Lemon was sour. It was
But
not...
you were completely like a self-taught baker at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah. At this point, completely self-taught.
Yeah.
Chocolate is a slight bitterness to it.
Yeah.
I never understood like the Indian palate so much at that point, and I had to understand the Indian palate. So till I didn't start, how would I get it? So that's how it started. It started doing well. I started taking spaces in malls and selling cupcakes. That was crazy tough because, and it's one of the proudest and also the hardest times of my life because imagine taking a stable, and typically at that time I think Select City used to charge you about 8,000 rupees for the day. So you're selling a cupcake for 80 bucks. You have to sell at least 100 cupcakes just to recover the cost of the table.
Yeah.
Not the cost of the cupcakes or your transport and back and forth, And then when you stand in Select City, your South Delhi is a small place. And that was one of the only malls there at that time. And you're meeting people you know. You're meeting your peers. You're meeting your friends. You're meeting your friends' parents. You're meeting your parents' friends. And you feel thoda small. You can, or they can make you feel small. Ki, oh, here's a pity purchase. We just bought your cupcake. Typically you come from families where you would be on the other side of buying it, not the one selling it. And then it's really hard because, there were times when they would come and I wanted to duck under the table or like go to the bathroom and hide or something. But I was like, no, it's okay. because I knew what my end goal was. At that point, I thought I'm going to have a fantastic bakery and a cloud kitchen. I never dreamt at that point that this is where the journey is going to take me. But I had committed to the journey. Ki ye karna hai. So when I say ki I want to be out there, I want to be out there. And now you fast forward to 2025, everybody's at like all these events and all these malls, and
this
it's
has
become the cool
norm
thing
now.
to do, and it's the norm now,
Yeah.
and no one judges you on it. Like, but I was 10 years before, you know, and things were vastly different. Then people didn't have the courage to go against the traditional norms of society. You know, westernization was just kicking in on some levels. It wasn't so out there. And that was it. So because of doing all these events, I got a lot of clients. And then from the kitchen in my house, I moved to a room in my house. From a room in my house, I moved to a small studio for 8,000 rupees in Kalkaji. From there, I moved to a cloud kitchen in Okhla, and I opened a store in GK2. So this was a journey about 3 to 4 years in this. And I had fantastic clients. I worked with PVR Cinemas. I worked with Big Basket. I worked with a lot of corporates at that point. Airbnb I worked with. And yeah, we did huge Diwali orders. Like, everything was massive. Everything was going well. But then I was like, ye scalable nahi hai. You know, every time I was like, the money is good. The hours were ridiculous. Anything could go wrong at any time. You know, something as small as a cake delivery would give me like stress because there was no Ola, Uber like so amazingly available. You were still depending on some auto guy, or largely you were using your private vehicle to do deliveries, and then you need one person to hold the cake. So it just didn't make sense.
Even the temperature control thing.
Yeah, everything made a difference. And at, I mean, 14, there was no quick commerce, and there were none of these guys available to do deliveries. And at that time, I remember even the cabs were like, "Hum nahi leke jayenge. Koi baithega to hum leke jayenge," you know. So it was tough. And if you're making a cake and client wants free delivery, so if you're delivering a 1,500 rupee cake and the taxi is taking $400, what money have you made off it? So I was like, yeah, this is not scalable. Plus, shit hits the fan all the time in the kitchen, which is out of my control, because this whole mentality here of chalta hai, ho jayega, it doesn't work. And then luckily one of these days, during this time, when I was going through all this frustration, a client walked in and she said, you know, she was a little arrogant. And she was like, कैसी bakery है? तुम fondant cakes नहीं बनाते हो? And I was like, अच्छा, बनाते हैं. Place your order. So with that, this is when the fondant cake journey began. And that's where again I got into it because of the business brain. I said, cake to aata hai, bana bhi liya. Now you only have to decorate it, right? Like, so how hard can it be? And that time, believe me, there were no tutorials, no skills. It was just YouTube, finding some American bakers who are doing it from home as well to learn DIY. You're using your kitchen utensils and tools because there was nothing available at that point in time. But I said, yeah, the margin is double because suddenly, like a cake that you sell for 1,200, you can charge 1,800 just because you're decorating it. And decorating is very subjective to what you want to charge for it. So yeah, business plan went ting ting ting. This is gonna be good money. Let's do it because on the same cake I'll make more. And if I do the same number of cakes, just my top line will go up by 40%. So let's do it.
At that point, you didn't know how to do fondant.
Of course I didn't.
But
I
you
didn't
just
even
decided.
Know. I was like, bus.
I'll do it.
If someone has come to me and asked for it, that means there is a demand for this. That means I need to brush up my skills and I need to learn the skill. Now, whatever the hell it takes, I have to do it. And I have this rule even till today. If 3 people tell me the same thing, I really look into it seriously because I believe it's coming from somewhere. So I started buying the product, and I remember it was $550 for one box of a kg. And a lot of times it was over dried. It was like a brick. You couldn't use it. And it wasn't performing. So in the summers, I used it for about a year. And in the summers, it would leak oil. It would smell. I don't know about the smell part, but I could see the oil at the bottom of the box. And in the rainy seasons, it would not take the moisture and it would just crack and fall. So I remember I was doing one delivery. It was from just Kalkaji to Panchsheel, which is 5-6 kilometers. And I had this 2-tier cowboy cake. And before I reached Panchsheel, the cake just tore and it just slid down, you know. I was mortified. I was like, and there was nothing I could do about it. I was sitting in this cab holding this cake like this in front of the AC, making sure everything was done. But there was nothing I could do, and I was feeling so bad because it was a 2-tier, so it was a big party. And
how did you salvage that?
I always carry extra. So I went there and I salvaged it just long enough for him to cut the cake. Because it collapsed after that. But I knew that, you know, when you know that there's no point of, when there's a crack in the foundation, you know there's no point of, there's a point of no return. And that moment reminded me of how I felt at my wedding reception. And I was like, bro, this is not going to fly. Like, I have done nothing wrong. I have given a fantastic cake and I'm going to get shit for it because the product that I put on top as a decorative didn't fly.
Yeah.
Like it didn't stabilize or work for the environment. So I was like, ye hai kya fondant? So I got a box and I read the ingredients and then I started studying. I was like, ye bana do na. So then this is very scalable and I can sell across the world and it will become a standardized business where the hours are normalized. I mean, I thought the hours would be normalized, but anyway. But it was relatively better than running a bakery,
Yeah.
you know. So I started studying what is food technology, started buying research papers from the Culinary Institute of America to understand what is each ingredient, what are the Indian names for it. If you don't find this ingredient, what are the sister ingredients, what are the alternatives, how do you use it, how do you activate it, how do you store it, like everything, A to Z. And then I used to go to Chandni Chowk. So, you know, so glam.
On the high.
Just so glam my journey was. So I used to go there and there's a place called Novelty Cinema and there are only like 6, 7, 8 cake suppliers and it's always been like that, you know. So I used to go and sit there for hours and their shops were like 100 square feet, 150 square feet with like people bhare hue, filthy to the tea, chuhe bhi bhag rahe hain, sab kuch ho raha hai. That's how old Delhi is, right? It's not glamorous. So I used to sit there the whole day and I would just watch people buying things, how much are they buying things, which brands are they buying, what is selling, because these guys were traders. So they were trading in everything and I wanted to understand.
Market research there.
Yeah, so what else, how else to do market research? And then I become such good friends with the owners, they're friends even today.
Yeah.
You know, I say, Uncle, मैं ये बना दूँ तो क्या कहते बना के तो बिटिया तो बहुत बड़ा ये हो जाएगा. I was like, great. And anytime they had a break, I would sit with them and drink tea and understand more. And this went on for months. It went on for 6 months. And then I'd go to the ingredient supplier who trades ingredients. And then he would tell me कौन सा import आ रहा है, क्या import होता है. For example, अगर glycerin और glucose बन रहा है, उसका raw material तो import ही होता है. It's not made in India. You know, so you understand so many things that are claimed to be made in India, but the base material is actually being imported. And then, you know, how to figure out sugar vendors, sugar suppliers, all of that. Like, it was a new business.
And during this time, you were continuing your bakery? Or?
I continued my bakery because I had to pay the
Holy,
bills, right? Like,
my God.
So I was doing both the things at the same time. And it was hard. So that's why it probably took 2 years. I would have gotten there much faster. But again, why would I shut something that's good and running because I want to do something else till I did not have proof of concept?
Yeah.
So I launched the product on Facebook. I just said, you know, I'm going to send you free samples. Let me know if you want it. And that's it. I got over 100 replies. Everybody loves a freebie, I figured. And I shipped it across. And I got fantastic reviews. Like, everybody was so happy with the product. And I never looked back, you know, after that day. But I'll tell you this. There was another incident when I launched it officially at a small bake fair. Like, it was a bakers collective that had happened. It was about 150 bakers. And I gave my product. And you know, this is not a sailing off into the sunset story. They were like, ये क्या बकवास बनाया है? ये बहुत ही गंदा है. It's horrible. And they all like completely like ripped me apart and it happened publicly on Facebook and everything as well. Like really went at it. And I don't know why people in India get so personal, but they did. You know, if you're failure, it does not mean you're a bad person. Like you just didn't get something right, you know. And then I said, that was the point where I had to decide because I was crushed. I was heartbroken. I was like, ab kya karu? Because I had spent 2 years to get this right. And I was trying to understand what is the problem. So I started calling them up and saying, okay, I know you didn't like it, but can you tell me what the problem was? And they did. So I said, okay, fine. I made something traditional based on what the technical definition of that product is and how it is used in Europe and US. Then I realized ki bhai, this is a aata gundhi nation. So the way that you treat a product, your wrist and everything, your DNA is already inclined in a certain way to use stuff a certain way. We are rough and tough. We are those people, you know. We're not treating dough like a baby. We're actually kutoing it and marrowing it and all of that. So that was one. And I said, second is we are very low on patience. So, you know, no matter how I tell them how to knead the fondant, it is a roti kneading culture. It is like chapati. That's all. So I tweaked the product to incorporate these two behavioral issues that they were having, and that was it. Uske baad to now the gaadi didn't stop after that because I figured it out. I was like, it's going to be too expensive to educate crores of people. Simpler to give them what they want and understand why what works for them works for them. And that's exactly what I did. And then I created history.
And at this point, let's be clear, you had no technical background. You
No,
were
none.
Just self-educating yourself. And
Absolutely.
just
And it didn't stop there because that is just when the challenge started. अब मशीनें चाहिए प्रोडक्ट बनाने के लिए. मशीन्स कौन सी खरीदूं, कहाँ से खरीदूं? इंडिया में तो बनती नहीं है. आधे लोगों को तो समझ ही नहीं आता what is fondant. So I spent half of my life explaining what is fondant. You know, and then I started making machines.
Yeah. You started making machines.
I started engineering my own machines because I didn't know what to do. I bought a few Chinese machines, but because the dough is, it's a sugar dough and it has a huge density to it. It's not easy for those machines because the motors that they were fitting were not the right, they don't have the right amount of power. So HP is what you call it. So, you know, they'd put 1.5 HP, maybe I need over 3 or 5. So it wasn't working. Also the belts that they used were like, would snap because again, it was meant for cream and things like that, you know, generic baking stuff. So I remember I met this guy who repairs machines and was a young guy. He used to come with his father to help me out because I met them over time because these imported machines were going on getting kharab.
Yeah.
And he said, Didi, banate kyun nahi hai? And I was like, chalo, let's do this. So we sat and we took out drawings and I used to go with him to Panchkiya Road to find machines, parts, gearbox. I understood what that is. I understood HP ki motors, kitni hoti hai, kiska kya kaam hota hai. And that's how it started. So even now, 6 years in, every single machine is built to my specs in the company. We don't buy off the rack for anything. And when we want to develop a new product, I design a new machine. So I spent time making and designing machines. And I taught this boy how to build machines. And today he runs his own company selling the machines he made for me.
At this point, you're an entrepreneur, you're a baker, you're an engineer, you're also a food technologist, and you're also amazing at social media because you started Facebook before it was cool.
Yeah.
Or like Facebook ads were a proper thing in your marketing budget, right? How does that feel?
I don't know
Wearing
how I
so
do
many
it.
hats.
I just don't get it. And I think it's going to, if you met me another year later, there'll probably be more hats to this.
You'll be doing another thing.
Because that's the only way to excel, right? Like how do you, in food, you have to be consistent. If you're not consistent, you're as good as dead.
Yeah.
So if you have to put all your energy into consistency. And for that, things like knowing your product, knowing your market. So a lot of times when COVID hit, they would send raw materials which were not of good quality, like the same grade, but with fillers in them.
Yeah.
Okay, fillers just means you're adding something that's going to not do anything to the product. It'll reduce probably its strength, but volume-wise, it's not going to do anything. It'll just substitute.
Yeah.
And I would catch them
Yeah.
in a second. So now, you know, there are factories who work with me and they're like, अगर गौरी मैम के यहाँ से complaint आई ना तो आँख बंद करके चुपचाप से ले लो because she's not messing around. Like she knows exactly what she's talking about. And you have to know your product. You have to know your ingredients because you'll get ripped up like this. You will not understand कि क्या हुआ. So we have protocols now in place where when materials come in, how we test each one of them to know the grade. In fact, the relation has become so good that anytime now a factory is introducing a new product, they first send me a sample. कि पहले आप please बताओ क्या है इसका feedback and
wow.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize that Confect is not doing well for India? Let me expand to US or somewhere else. At
Great question.
What point?
Great question. So, COVID was one of the best things that ever happened. Two things. In India, when you work with distributors, unless you get a demand for the product, the distributor does not want to sell it.
Yeah.
उसको brand नहीं बनाना है, उसको माल बेचना है, ठीक है? So I used to go and I got ripped off a lot कि आप मैडम माल दे दो and बिकेगा तो आपको payment मिल जाएगा. I lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
I didn't know what else to do. So you know how Will Smith is in the movie, like what is it called, Pursuit of Happiness?
Yes.
That was me. I used to fill my gaadi ka dicky with my fondant, and I would just go shop to shop and say, "Sir, please rakh lo." All the baking supply stores. And these guys were like, okay, you know, some lady making fondant from home, typical,
Yeah, you
not
have a
taking
stereotype.
seriously.
इसको तो, हाँ.
Yeah. And it didn't help that I spoke good English. I didn't have a like Indian accent. My Hindi was not so good. So they were like, we can take it for a ride.
Yeah.
And I did lose a lot of money. They would take me for these, क्या बोलते हैं, the product trials. And I remember going to these dirty bakeries because they were like just not hygienic. And, you know, there were people working in banyans.
Oh.
And they're all grounding around you while you're teaching them how to roll. And I'm trying to keep my cool completely. And here I'm in my chef coat trying to like really be technical and teach them. And they were just having fun for the afternoon. And over time that gets really old. I'm like, I'm not making any headway. Nothing is happening. So I said, okay. So again, went back to Facebook and advertised the product there. And then I told the home bakers that if you know any bakery stores around your house, please recommend my product to them and give me their numbers. And that's how I built a distribution network. Because then the customer was calling the shop saying ki ye wala brand rakho. And then he called me. So I was like, flip it on the head. Again, I said, no, you find a way out. So that's what I did in this. And then COVID mein, everything was always imported is better than Indian, right? And I didn't agree with that philosophy at all. But they didn't value an Indian product at that point. So COVID mein export band, import band ho gaya. Ab to hai nahi. So they started buying my product and then they realized that I was cheaper, but I was also better.
Wow.
So I built a huge base there. And we doubled year on year during that time. And I grew the range. So people kept saying ki, because import to bilkul band ho gaya tha. So they were like, ab gel colors bhi banao, ab sprinkles bhi banao, ab lace bhi banao, drips bhi banao. And I made all of it. They were like, your fondant is so good, I'm sure your rest of your products will be as good as well. And that's what happened. So we grew exponentially. But then when COVID shut, I knew that India's two things are going to happen. One, the economy is going to take time to recover. Everybody has depleted of their savings. I knew that the cake business survived because celebration is universal. And maybe 5 kilo का cake नहीं आएगा for a birthday party, but half kilo का cake तो आएगा घर पे. इसलिए the industry survived. However, now, the people who thought this industry was amazing are all going to get into it. So there's going to be a massive price war. There's going to be a massive amount of companies who are white labeling and trading coming in because that is how India works. You know, and it was exactly that's what happened. So, you know, we're a brand who is selling, let's say, a gel color for anywhere. Imported comes about 200, I'm for about 140 for a small bottle of 25 ml. There was a brand that launched it for 30 rupees. 30 rupees.
Ooh. How did they do that though?
Because it's not up to standard. It's not up to code. Anything that's edible cannot be at that point. But the point is the customer doesn't know. They're just looking at the price point. You know, whether it's food color or if it's actually paint pigment, I don't know. But I was perplexed because I was like, I know the cost of raw material. How is this guy doing it? It's not possible because that's what it would cost you to make if you use the good stuff. So probably more. And that's how crazy the industry went. So fondant was even selling for 150 rupees that sells at 500. You know, like there's a huge category B that came in. And everybody started importing. And I was like, okay, I'm not getting into this. I have a vision for the brand. We're a brand. We're not going to get into price wars. The minute I enter this price war, my brand is over. I'm like, let's pivot to other markets. And I have the same competitor in India that I have globally, which is China, largely, and a bit of Turkey. So like, यहाँ band बजा दे तो वहाँ भी बजा देंगे. So at that time, I put up a thing on Amazon, see I'm interested, and they gave me a call. This is AmazonGlobal.com. So when they called me, I said, this is my product. And literally, I remember that guy said, you're going to sell sprinkles to the Americans. And I said, yes, I'm going to sell sprinkles to the Americans. Watch me do it. And they didn't believe me at that point. And then we registered. And so I'm the only one from this country to export such huge quantities of sprinkles and fondant across the world. So we're doing US, UK and Australia.
Crazy.
And my product is loved. The thing is, you compete on a national platform where nobody knows who's Chef Gauri. There is no Facebook for me to advertise. In fact, probably the fact that I come from India is not going to go for me, it'll go against me. So we actually don't advertise that. And you compete on pure price and quality. And that's it. Now, in a year to make it to $1 million is no joke. And, you know, I used to always say that we are not the land of only mithai and Ayurveda and oils. There is so much more. Largely, these are the categories and handicrafts are exported. I was like, but India should compete on tech. And if Chandrayaan can make it to the moon, then what the hell are we doing? You know? And there is technology in food, and that is not Swiggy and Zomato. Tech in food means actually like innovation, not quick commerce. And that was it, literally. There's no looking back. Now I actually work. Confect is known across Amazon. There's nobody in the senior leadership who doesn't know who I am, because I've seen my journey from selling $3,000 a month to over $150,000 now. And I used to meet them every few months, like this little kid and see, look, I did it. And he's like, acha, it's good, it's good. And then when serious numbers came, they were like, holy shit, she did it. And her repeat rate is good.
She's
and
selling sprinkles to Americans.
yeah, she's selling sprinkles to Americans. And I love it. And we get amazing reviews. So in fact, when the episode aired, there were so many people who wrote from the US saying, I'm a baker here and I only use your products and they're amazing. And that was just, it's incredible to have people across the country. So in the US, UK and Australia, all the 3 markets we're in, we're on the bestseller list consistently for 12 months. That's unheard of amongst thousands and thousands of products. So I think if
an
you,
Indian brand.
Yeah. So if you just focus on product quality, I think, and give it to them a reasonable price, you're gold.
Let's come to Shark Tank.
Oh my God.
How was preparing, first of all, for Shark Tank like? And when you heard that you're getting telecasted now, how did that feel? And why did you apply to Shark Tank in the first place?
So my friends told me to apply to Shark Tank. They had gone the season before and they said that why are you not doing it? Like, you are so out there, your story is so spectacular, we've seen you do this, try to kar lo. And I was like, okay, try kar lete, try karne mein kya hai? The year prior to that, I had done Amazon Propel. So Amazon Propel is the Amazon's incubator program for brands who only export.
Okay.
So I came there also in the top 4. I was. And but I felt that the impact could have been better. So I was like, okay, we need to go bigger. And he said, try Shark Tank. I said, okay, if I can do Shark Tank, it'll be amazing. So I applied. But the process is about 6 months long. The second round, they ask you for a reel. And then they ask you for an in-person interview. And then you get to know whether you're going to go or not. The interesting thing is that all of these next steps that come with a very short timeline. So you have to turn it around very quick. And a lot of times you're not there. You're not prepared. Like, if they want within 2 days for you to send a video, you have to figure out what you want to say, how you want to say it, what the pitch is going to be. So you have 2 days to figure out how you're going to pitch on Shark Tank. You know, you don't apply and prepare a pitch at that point. And then when they tell you about the shoot, you hardly have 7 days to get to Bombay, wherever you are. Including your stuff, including your display, including your clothes, everything has to be done in there. So it's crazy. And we did this Eiffel Tower, which was about 3,500 sugar roses. So we had to make those sugar flowers in like 3 days.
My God.
It was intense. And then make sure that they were shipped and they reached in time. And it was hell. And then I was there backstage actually putting them up and assembling
But
them.
on the back end, you also had to prepare for stock and marketing, cost, and everything. So how did you plan all of that?
Like I always do. Very systematic, very thought through, planned, and it's worked. So my team and I were already working like 2 months in advance to figure out the creatives and the narrative and discounts, deals, offers, visibility, everything. We worked on it.
Shark Tank, did you see a spike?
We saw a huge amount of action. So I think almost 10x.
Wow.
We've more than doubled in terms of number of people who even just came onto our page, and it's continued to be that way over the last 3 weeks. And honestly, I didn't know my episode was going to air so early. Like, you know, they were like Jan first because like, okay, first week, chalo, maybe second, third. But like first episode of the season is, this is when I say, no, entrepreneurs, you cannot be prepared for anything.
And I'm telling you, I think there's a reason they kept it Shuruaat mein, because it was the most masaledar episode so far, genuinely. The only episode that has sparked conversation so far.
And it's gone viral, like, and there's so many people and it sparked so much of a debate. And, you know, I've gotten to meet Namita post that as well. And it's been amazing. It doesn't feel real. So people have been asking me a lot, ki, how does it feel? And I was like, मुझे लगता है कोई और है वहाँ पे. You know, when I'm watching it, it doesn't feel like it's me. Like, I went through those motions. Like, in my head, the experience is very different. Watching yourself on TV, it doesn't get old.
But during the show, right, like, you were grilled so much.
Yeah, I was grilled a lot.
So, I have 2 questions there, right?
Yeah.
First, as an entrepreneur who knows that millions of Indians are going to be watching this and this is going to make or break your brand for you and your personality as a perception as a founder, right? How did you maintain your cool at that point? And the second question is, do you think that sometimes these sharks over grill you solely for like entertainment and drama value as compared to genuinely wanting to ask questions?
Okay, so answering the first part of your
Yes.
question was about the grilling, right? And how do I maintain that composure? So I'll be really honest. Like the first 2 or 3 minutes, you're really intimidated because you don't get to meet the sharks or rehearse. It's not a rehearsed show. It's not a scripted show. You have to know enough of your business to be able to walk in there and answer anything that comes. Having said that, it is the hardest pitch you ever have to do to an investor. Not only are they investors, you're on national television. There are about 200 plus cameras there. You have got your face, your makeup, all of that done. It adds to it, like your clothes, you're mic'd up. There is so much going on that level. You have a beautiful display which you spend a lot of time on. You have to tell your story. It has to be largely in Hindi. Not many of us speak Hindi all the time, all day. It's not easy. I think in English. So for me to translate that into Hindi was very tough. And then the biggest thing is you have to know all your numbers. So your entire business history, every single number in your business, it's really hard to know it on point. And even if you know it, there's no guarantee that you won't black out when they ask you something. And when they grill you, each of them grill you at the same time. I don't know why that happens because probably it's a part of like intimidation and the tank experience. But you will start answering another person's question and before you finish they'll ask another one and then there's like who are you going to answer first? Nahi, pehle mere ko answer karo, pehle mere ko answer karo. And that's what frazzles you. And so there are 2 points in the show where I think once I said, wait, let me explain. And I explained to them and I took a deep breath. And I think the second time I was like, I lost my train of thought. Because that time I was fuming. And because I wasn't being able to speak in continuance to get my point across. मैं कोई 2 चीज़ 3 चीज़ like words बोल रही थी and they would cut me short and be like, अच्छा, this. So for example, Vidita said, do you know this brand Whipped? I said, there is no brand called Whipped in this segment that sells cake decoratives. Yes, there is a bakery called Whipped which is funded and is doing very well, but there's no brand selling raw materials. So what was the reply to that? अच्छा तो आपको अपने competitors नहीं पता. I'm like, what the hell? It was unfair. Like, why don't you just accept the fact that you probably got it wrong? And that's your limitation of knowledge that you thought Whipped is a cake decorative brand, but it's a bakery. So why are you asking me about a bakery?
Even the 800 SKUs point, what do you think of it?
Ridiculous. Absolutely stupid.
I think you said after the show that वो खुद इतने चश्मे क्यों बेचते हैं?
Correct. And people were saying I'm not talking about you're not talking about a category, but you're talking about SKUs. I'm talking about SKUs because it's 800 SKUs that we were talking about. He was saying एक बेचो, 800 मत बेचो. For example, I sell sprinkles and I said कि we have 300 SKUs in sprinkles. So the same thing, na? Why एक ही चश्मा ना? Why not so many? Like why does Mother Dairy only sell milk? Are you questioning them that why are you not selling milk? Why are you selling milk? Why are you selling mithai now? Why are you suddenly selling ice cream? Like it's been your whole thing, right? That's the first one. And the second one is you build a food business on basket size. Every business is different. Every industry is different. So if it's like, why does MDH make only one type of masala? उसको बोलो सिर्फ एक ही मसाला बेचे ना, अपनी देगी मिर्च or something. Why does he sell all of it? Because when you have a customer, you scale your business on basket size. So that means you want the average order value to grow. How do you do that? You add more products. So I want that someone who's making a cake from start to finish should be buying my products. So उसको अगर color चाहिए तो मेरे से ले रहा है, sprinkle चाहिए तो मेरे से चाहिए, fondant ले रहा है तो मेरे से ले रहा है. Why would he buy just fondant from me and buy color from another company? Also globally, that's how it works. And then the other argument was, you're not a brand yet for you to be able to say, I want to make so many ASINs. I don't think random people or random unknown brands make $1 million and have a repeat rate, or build loyalty. And I'm sorry, I've been in the business for over 10 years in food and 6 years of Confect. I am cash flow positive, EBITDA positive, profitable from the first day. I have built a brand. I have a loyalty. I have a following. This is not a fly-by-night operation. So just because it blew up, like Lensfart and all blew up because of huge funding, doesn't make them a brand. A brand is based on the customers that you have. So I think the very definition of brand is misunderstood.
Yeah. But how did you as a founder sort of prioritize profitability over burn and grow?
There was no option to burn. We were absolutely bootstrapped as bootstrap goes, with no support from the fam on that level. Blew up all my savings to build the business. little bit of money that came in from the bakery. Like I said, it was not huge amount of money. It's very seasonal, the business. So it was completely bootstrapped and everything went back into the business. Like I haven't taken a salary till now. I spend what I want to spend as I like to spend. But I don't take a salary. There's no fixed amount that comes into my pocket. But I was very clear that break even or profitable. Negative nahi chalega. We will not work in the red. And that was my thing from day one.
Now, the second part of the question. Do you think that it's the grilling is for the drama, or is it like genuinely
So, you know, there's
curiosity?
this thing that my parents used to say when we were growing up, don't talk for the sake of talking. And people do talk for the sake of talking because they like the sound of your own voice. Now, I understand it's a TV show. I understand you have to give your inputs. You also have the pressure to be sharks and, you know, you're perceived in a certain way. But gauge the person in front of you, right? Entrepreneurship is a brotherhood. Like, you should understand that whether your struggles, every entrepreneur goes through a struggle, okay? So just because you reach 5,000 crores doesn't mean your struggles are over. You're still struggling on many things, and so am I. So either you try and understand the business. So I would have appreciated if they had asked me more questions about my business and understanding it. But don't make fly-by-night statements like, "Ek hi SKU becho." Then I'm telling him, you know, the market size is this much. Don't go on market size. How the hell do you build a business if you don't go on market size? How do you, when you go to an investor, the first thing they ask you is what is the size of the market and how much can we gauge and what percentage of that can you take, you know? Now, if you're saying global market size of fondant is 5,000 crores, to 500 ban jao. You know what it takes to become 10% share globally of a market? Like, are you joking? Do you know how much money I'm going to burn just to do one product? It's very difficult. Penetration is very difficult with one product. Market experimentation is very difficult because when you enter a new market, you don't know what works. And I said this in the show. I said in India, the largest product for me is my fondant. But in the US, the largest product for me is sprinkles. I sent both the fondant and the sprinkles. I was banking on the fondant. But they loved the sprinkles. Now, if I said मैं सिर्फ fondant बेचूंगी, आज तो company बंद हो जाती. Because I was like, अच्छा अमेरिका में पसंद नहीं आया. That's not the way to do it. You will find your hero everywhere because you will fill a gap somewhere. I'm not able to fill the gap for sprinkles in India because we're more expensive, we're premium, we're FDA approved, right? We're good enough to export globally. So I cannot compete with the gunny bags that come in from China and are traded on. They come without papers. And you eat that. Good for you. I don't think I want that in my life. And I saw that, look, it's real, it's true. Most of them that come claim that they're like all edible food colors and they're perfectly safe and all, but who knows?
It's scary for me to listen to this as a consumer, that what am I eating then?
You guys have no idea what you're eating. And that was the point. Like, you know, khane mein iman hona chahiye is what I started this business for. And the other thing is that the largest consumers for cake in the world are children under the age of 13. Now, we always talk about keto, this paleo diet, this diet, that diet, gluten-free, vegan. But no one thinks about the kids. You just buy them a dessert somewhere randomly. But because you're not interested in that category of food, you don't do your research. And you have no idea what they're eating. So while you're so conscious that I don't give my kids sugar, I don't give them processed foods, I'm like, hello, and that was me mimicking how people talk in general. Why don't you just spend 5 minutes to understand, you know, cola is bad, but you think cake is okay because you're buying it from an XYZ place. Why don't you get to the bottom of it? It's not good. And ingredients that are coming into the country come in. And there's nothing wrong with calling India price sensitive. It is. And I said this at the show also. We come from a place where takeaway tubs are washed and kept for reuse. We don't come from an economy or a mindset where we throw things away. We like to recycle, reuse. You know, we've seen our mom do it forever. Packets come in, those are folded and kept neatly in the house, and this is our culture. So when I say our culture is that we're price sensitive, we are. We've always seen our moms stretch her monthly budget and still have pocket money or pocket like money for a rainy day. And we've always seen that happen, right? So she's able to do that. That means that is inherent in our community. Now, if I say that we're price conscious, I don't mean it negatively. I understand where the market is. I just implore people that please don't compromise. You know, when you have a baby, you are either buying Nestle products for milk powders or you are buying nappies, which are like Huggies or Pampers. Why do you buy that? Why don't you buy like some random brand which is like half the price? Because it matters. Because what you see instantly is probably a diaper rash or something that's not good, which is going to cost you more. This you understand. And even though, like, the most expensive thing when you have kids are diapers. They hemorrhage you
Yeah.
because it's really
Yeah.
expensive to maintain it, right? And it's not easy for everybody to do it. But that knowledge you have, ki I will give best. But when it comes to food, then why? Why are you not thinking? If it's your kid's first birthday cake, second birthday cake, and you love this child more than anything in the world and you want to be so protective of them, why can't you make an effort to understand what's good and not have everything be judged by price? Because if you judge on price, then you're in for a ride, like a roller coaster ride.
But then, are you planning to cater to price-sensitive Indians at any point in time right now?
Very good question. So what I do is, so I'm not expensive. Let me put it that way. I compete with the best imported brand in the country, and just because they're alternatives today available for half the price. So there are two kinds of markets that exist in every industry. There's a grade A and there's a grade B. I play in grade A, and I continue to stay that way because that's my legacy and that's what I want to do as a brand. Grade B is where the mass plays. And I'm never going to be interested there because for me to achieve that price point will mean I will have to compromise somewhere. And Piyush said this to me, that why don't you try and reduce your price? And that annoyed me even more because the whole foundation of the company gets rocked.
Yeah.
Because you're standing for quality. If I was not standing for quality, I would not be building $1 million brand overseas. And the reason that I get this, I'm getting distinguished from everybody else out there is because of quality, is because it tastes good. And someone who I don't know across the ocean is recognizing that and saying, hey, this is yum, I love it.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing that we focus on is taste. And taste comes at a price. We don't use synthetics. When we export our products in mostly natural colors, we haven't introduced natural colors in India because, again, it'll take a while for the country to understand. And there's nothing wrong with the fact that we are getting there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say that. And I will go where my business takes me. Why would I be like, nahi, mujhe sirf yahi jamana hai, And I had my own adversities. I had my own pressures. I had to build my life. I wanted to settle down. I wanted to buy a house. I want to have a kid. I want to be able to raise that kid. So where I understand the market and where I can see that I can penetrate it really fast, India was never going to not go anywhere. It was always going to be home ground. But if my home ground is growing at 10 to 15%, but my export is growing at 200%, I mean, it's how
mathematical sense, yeah.
And I make all my decisions based on numbers. And USA was a incredible thing that happened, and it got proof of concept.
But how did you crack marketplaces like Amazon also? Because I think that's someone like me who wants to start a business or anyone else. That's the big question that they have. How to crack marketplaces. And you cracked it, and how?
So I think a lot of it is owed to the fact that I've had a lot of international exposure since I was growing up. We always had our summer vacations outside the country. I think my thinking is half Angrez in a lot of ways, really honestly. My family also thinks like that. I'm very progressive. I understand the culture there. I've lived in the UK for a few years. So I know,
studied there.
and I know inherently what works there. I know what their mannerisms are. And I had the best of both worlds. Now, when you build a business on Amazon or any other platform, anywhere in the world, it's a whole new business. ये तो पहले मैं लोगों को समझा दूँ कि भाई इंडिया में ब्रांड बन गया इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि यूएस में भी ब्रांड है. You start from scratch, and you have to market. You have to understand right from your titles to your keywords, to your search term, to your description. You have to be on point. Like they call it fondant in the US, not sugar paste. Americans don't distinguish that. You have to be very clear about that. Certain colors, spellings, terminologies, very different. Mindset, very different. Understand, for every category, what I do first is I understand what is the current market price which is selling, and can I compete with that? Now, to compete with that, how much will Amazon take away? And then how much is my marketing? And how much is my shipping? And what is my cost of product? Iske baad, can I break even? Because if you foolishly think na कि मैं dollars में कमा रही हूँ और मैं बहुत कमा रही हूँ पैसे dollars में, it's not like that. It's like, you get more bandwidth to spend on marketing. because you're selling in dollars,
Yeah.
but you're still spending.
Yeah.
So in this equation, actually Amazon.com makes the most money. But it's a long-term game. It's a long ride. Like if you're not with your blinders, you will lose focus and you will just burn. So in the first year, we spent about 50 to 60% on marketing alone because that's the bandwidth we had to burn. And it was not negative, it was break even. As long as I made that money back and I was able to pay my DHL bills, I was very clear.
Yeah.
I paid for my cost plus my shipping.
Yeah.
I'm okay. And then this year we pivoted to sea shipments. We have pivoted to reducing that marketing spend from 60 to 30. And just in the second year, no one has been able to drop it so much. It takes you, maturity is a very big thing in international markets. Also, international markets are very different. They're not gimmicky. You can't run a flash sale and suddenly want. They like their value to a certain point. तो वो सिर्फ इसलिए नहीं खरीदेंगे क्योंकि डिस्काउंट चल रहा है. Brand is a very big thing for them. Quality is a very big thing for them. And another wonderful thing about them is that, in India, if someone has a bad experience, you definitely hear about it. But if they don't have if they have a good experience, you're never hearing about it. But there, you get it all. You get the good, you get the bad, you get the ugly. And it's amazing that people take the time to review. It's a very developed, different mindset. And that's helped us immensely, a lot. And that's why we've grown. And we've been able to create new categories, contrary to what Piyush said. We're able to create many, many more categories now. And this year we are, from 800, we plan to go to about 1,000, 1,100 this year. So I'm sure he'll be cringing somewhere when he hears me say this. But that's going to happen.
How is it getting a deal from Namita, and post Shark Tank, did you interact with her? How was that like?
Okay, so I think Namita's like a woman after my own heart. We're very like-minded. Our approach to business is very similar. And I think our journeys are very similar in some ways, both born in families that were business-oriented, families that were built on entrepreneurship. You've seen your parents struggle, you've seen the up and down. Yes, today they looked at as families of privilege, but I had the fortune of having lunch with her and her family in Pune, and it was very heartening to hear the struggle, and I could relate to so much of the story. And I love how simple they were. And she said to me that, why I could understand you in a minute is because you're direct and I'm very direct.
Yeah.
And we just vibe on that. And I think she was the only person I really wanted to be standing behind me through this journey, because she really got it. She got it in a second. So, either you get it or you don't get it.
Yeah.
She got it.
Yeah.
I walked in and, she's a mom who bakes. So she was buying a lot of ingredients and bringing them into the country for her boys to bake with. And she got it in a second, that, oh my God, she's right. You don't get anything here.
Yeah.
I can't walk into a supermarket and find bakery supplies. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. I mean, her husband said, thank you so much, because now she's not going to bring suitcase full of stuff back home. And to me, that was like the cutest thing I've ever heard. But I think that's what it was. And being the first in the country never scared me. In fact, I was like, great if I could get the monopoly and have the first user advantage. And since Shark Tank is aired, so many people have said, you should just sell the company. And I was like, sell the company?
Yeah.
I just got started.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very long way to go. And my dream is to build a legacy brand and to be one of the first and to be known as one of the first to plant the Indian flag across the globe for something other than the land of snakes and Ayurveda and spices, and compete on that. So I think I've got a long way to go, and I'm damn excited to take this ride.
If you had to tell 3 tips to someone who wants to build something in the bakery industry, right? Or perhaps share some trends right now in this industry they could leverage, what would those 3 things be?
Okay, my first thing is never give up the basics. The basics never go out of fashion. So always ensure that whatever you build is built around a solid foundation of the basics. That could be a chocolate brownie, it could be a pineapple, it could be a black forest and your truffle, whatever you want to do, but that's your solid. That's not going anywhere. So I hear so many restaurants and so many people I've met and consulted over time saying, we want something different, something new. Bro, it doesn't fly. Understand that it's going to be a while before the basics go.
Yeah.
And the basics have not gone world over. You can go anywhere. You can go to France, you can go to Italy, you can go to London. You'll always find a chocolate pastry. You'll always find something with lemon. So the basics have never gone anywhere. So structure your business around that. The bakery industry is scarily trendy. So maximize on the trends but only have that section. So let's say if 60% is your base core, then maybe allow 20% of it to be trending focused or trend focused, because it takes a lot of turnaround time. It takes a lot of investment because you're buying stuff just to meet that trend. Suddenly when it's trending, the prices of everything have gone up because it's trending.
Right now, what is trending according to you?
Oh, these burn cakes,
Okay.
which make me cringe. Because I'm just thinking of all the ash and the pollution and the smoke
Yeah.
and everything that's gone into the cake on top
Yeah.
of that after it's been burnt.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really not convinced
Yeah.
on it. That's what's trending, and some of them may not be for you. Most of them have not been for me. You know, like putting mirrors on a cake. That was another one that they put a selfie cake. They put a mirror on it.
Selfie cake, though.
Yeah. So no, not my jam at all.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing I want to say is really build your brand on marketing. Don't become a deal brand. And marketing means standing for quality. So talk about your ingredients. Talk about what you do. Stay true to that. Don't get into a bakery and think मैं first year में profit कमाऊंगी. नहीं होने वाला है. I'll be amazed if that happens, because the setup cost is so high, and the salaries are expensive. So, and my other tip, which I always like to say, is try not hire from the industry.
Why?
It's very difficult to think outside the box from when you're from that industry. And then if you don't know enough about the industry, like I know so many bakeries that open up because it's trendy to open a bakery, but most of them don't know even the B of bakery.
Yeah.
Right? And then your chef is running your life.
Yeah.
And he's become boss man.
Yeah.
And he's kind of telling you where to go. And you're just, running helter-skelter doing that. So I'd prefer get a good consultant, get someone who really knows their business, and hire someone who's good, but not necessarily from the bakery. Because if you're hiring someone from the industry, you're not bringing anything new into your brand. There is nothing new. He's going to do exactly what he's done, and he's going to replicate it. So he's going to tell you, ये material यहाँ से लो, ये material यहाँ से लो, ये बना दो, यही menu होता है, मैम इतने का बिकता है. Like, so what have you done different?
Yeah.
How have you distinguished yourself? You know. So many companies who contact me even today that we're making sprinkles. Why don't you buy from us and resell? I said I don't.
White label कर दो.
कोई interest नहीं है. We will invest ourselves to build the machinery and build everything, but we don't want that.
Since you got a 1 crore deal on Shark Tank, right? I would say it was a fairly successful episode for you.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who's preparing for Shark Tank? Be prepared for the grilling.
Be prepared to be roasted. Roasted. It's got... Shark Tank is... I think it tests you on every parameter other than just the money. It tests you on how you know your business, but it tests you as a person. It tests you as what your acumen is. And yeah, you have to be prepared to be roasted to a certain extent. It's going to happen. I think that's also because it's a TV show. Usually in pitches, you don't get roasted. Like you don't think you're going to go and get roasted. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is stay true to yourself. I was telling you earlier that, I connected the dots in my story so many times because I repeated it I don't know how many times. Because when you start from the beginning and over 6 months, you have to stick to your story. And when you have to stick to your story, you can't make up shit because you won't remember.
Yeah.
And most likely you will mess it up when you go on the tank, right? Yeah. So don't fake it. Because you have made it. If you made it to Shark Tank, you have made it. So stop faking it. Like just be who you are. And unapologetically so. Don't feel the pressure. I know it's easier said than done. But we are on war lines and war fronts every day as entrepreneurs. So ye kya hai? Just another feather in a cap, a part of our journey. So yeah, be real.
And what's the next thing you have decided that you're going to do?
Oh my God.
Because we know then it's eventually going to happen now.
That's a really good question because I think within the next 2 years I would want, so we're entering 3 more countries this year.
Yeah.
I would like to set up offices internationally now.
Yeah.
So I want to be a globetrotter. I 2 things I want. I want a private jet with candy stripes. And I want a Netflix series on my story.
Done. Netflix series, let me know, I'll also help out because I am so intrigued by your whole story. Like, I would want to contribute at least to the writing part of it. Like,
that'll be amazing.
This is...
there's so much strength in speaking the truth. And you don't have to be politically correct, you just have to be real. And I'm so glad that real is trending suddenly, apparently.
Yeah.
Like being real is
Yeah.
trending. And that doesn't mean कि तुम घर के कपड़ों पे बैठ के बात कर रहे हो. It means really speaking the truth and pissing a few people off or
Yeah.
hurting a few people in the process. But knowing that your story is your own story, and people feel so scared because of the stigma, because of society, because of log kya kahenge,
Yeah.
because family kya bolegi. But then how do you tell your story?
Exactly.
I mean, I went on national television, and for me, to tell my story took immense strength. And honestly, till the last minute, I didn't know whether I had the guts to do it or not. And then I thought about it, and I thought about all the people who may not like what I have to say. I said, but this is my story to tell.
Yeah. Who else will tell it if not you?
And I'm here because of everything that happened to me has created the person I am today. So why would I apologize for it? Good, bad, or ugly, that's what you live through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Gauri. This
Most
was
welcome.
such a wonderful episode.
I'm glad.
Thank you. If you learned even one thing from this episode, then don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else and subscribe to the Witty Podcast so I can keep bringing incredible guests like her. Thank you.